Never before have we talked about the concept of equality than in this period and this time that we're living in. And affirmative action, gender equality, gender parity are all conversations across the board. In today's debate, we'll be having Mang'u High School versus Juja Senior School going against each other on the motion, affirmative action has failed in achieving equality and should be scrapped. I repeat the motion again, affirmative action has failed in achieving equality and should be scrapped. Team proposition, first speaker, you have 3 minutes on the floor.
Affirmative action has failed in achieving equality and should be scrapped. I'm here to strongly convince each and every one of you here that this thing has failed us. What is affirmative action? Affirmative action is the steps taken to increase representation of the marginalized groups in areas of employment, education, and culture. And when I talk of the marginalized groups, I give examples. For example, the women, the youth, the disabled. And then I ask myself, what is equality? Equality is giving everyone, and I repeat, everyone, same fair chance at the beginning of a journey. Ladies and gentlemen, if Y is equals to MX plus C, isn't it true that C is equals to Y minus MX? Affirmative action has taken us one step forward only to take us 2 steps backward. It has insinuated to solve a problem by creating another problem, and that's why I give it a synonym of reverse discrimination. What affirmative action has done is transferring the equality from one side to another. When you recognize the diversity of the marginalized groups at the expense of others, what do you think they will feel about it? When I recognize a black at the expense of a white, what do you think the white will think about? Is it being given justice? Is not being given justice. You don't recognize the diversity at the expense of qualification. Affirmative action has simply given us the theory of recognizing diversity at the expense of qualification. Why should I take an unqualified person from a marginalized group to go and fight for the rest, yet is unqualified for that job? Why can't I just take any other random person who can help that person or the marginalized groups achieve equality? Affirmative action has given us false impression. Third, affirmative action has created self-stigmatization. One day, I had a disabled person, mark you, a disabled person, saying that don't assume my disability defines me. The NGA organization in America gives us statistics that almost 60% of the disabled people are uncomfortable of being given an upper hand over any other person. If themselves they are not comfortable with the affirmative action, then why are we forcing them to recognize or to be impressed by what is against them? I make my submission, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alfred George from the Mang'u High School.
Second speaker, team opposition, you have 3 minutes.
So before I begin, my name is Juja from Juja Senior School. I am here to oppose the motion that has been brought forward. Before I begin, I will start by highlighting the things that I am going to do during my 3 minutes. I will rebut the points that have been given by the first proposition speaker. I will give out my points, and I will show you why this whole point of scrapping out affirmative action should be neglected and not focused on. So, my time begins in 3, 2, one. So our first proposition speaker has come up and said that it is not giving justice to the white people. First of all, historically speaking, white people have been given privilege. Who colonized us? It's the whites, right? So why are you saying that it has not given us, it has given them not justice? They already have the dominance that was there historically speaking. So you can't say that they weren't giving privilege. The unprivileged people are the people who are not being given the opportunity to showcase their ability in these in educational centers, in government, in work areas, and those are the people who were targeted by affirmative action. Now, to our point. Our first point states that it increases representation of underrepresented groups in workforces and educational premises and governments based on merits and qualification. First of all, you said that we're taking an unqualified person from these underrepresented groups and putting them in these sectors that are like the work and government. What do you mean that they're unqualified? Affirmative action was brought to give the qualified people who are not being represented an opportunity to stand up and represent their groups. So when you're telling me that they are unqualified, they were qualified, they just didn't have the opportunity. Like you said, equality is giving every single person an opportunity, right? They had the qualifications, they didn't have the opportunity. The affirmative action came out to give them the opportunity to get the scholarships to schools, to get hired into these workplaces, to vie for that seat in president. An example, in 1997, Honorable Phoebe Asio tabled the two-third rule in Kenyan government, which allowed for 33 seats to be provided for the women to vie in government. How did this affect the women? Every single issue that was discussed in the parliament, if it affected a woman in Kenya, it was spoken about by these representatives. It created a diverse and a more inclusive society where every single member of the society is being given a chance to stand up and show that their qualifications are needed in our world. Now, you want to tell me that you want to scrap off affirmative action. What are you giving us? What are you giving us in return for affirmative action? Because if you're going to scrap off affirmative action, you have to come up and tell us that we are removing affirmative action, but we're going to give you this instead because it hasn't achieved equality, right? And how can you say it hasn't achieved equality? Can you tell me that the world before affirmative action did not, and the world that we are in with affirmative action, there's no difference? Can you tell me that? There's a difference. There are women who are being given a chance to sit in the government. Women are given a chance to go to school. All these are things that have been brought by affirmative action. So tell me how it's bad to be represented in a government. Tell me how it's bad for a woman, for a person of color to stand up and vie for or get that job that they want, for it to be scrapped. Thank you.
Second speaker, team opposition, you have 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samuel Rukenya from Mang'u High School, here to propose that affirmative action has failed to meet its objectives and should be scrapped off. Number one, our Kenyan government has issued an equalization fund. Article 27, subsection 6 of the public finance has said that there have funds that have been set in place to bring about equitable regional development in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, these countries or these counties that have been targeted are the northeastern counties and the eastern counties as well. Counties such as Mandera, Wajir, Marsabit, all of these which you know. These funds have been put in place to ensure that services that are provided in the urban centers or developed centers should be well utilized, which is true. These funds have been set to ensure that there is water, the roads, the electricity have been provided to such people. Isn't it right? That's right. So what affirmative action has brought in essence is that these funds that have more been put in place. What all of us have seen right now, I am sure, is that in the news, everything that is being discussed is that in such countries where affirmative action has already been put in place, these funds have already been misused. Tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what have you seen being done? They are crying. The pleas on water are still there. The pleas on hunger are still there. The pleas on what do we call it? 80% of livestock, which people depend on. All of this, they deserve water. They need water, which has already been allocated funds. Where are these funds going to? What is affirmative action doing for us? Second thing I want us to say is that Affirmative action, ever since its inception in 1965, by the way, in the reign of John F. Kennedy, was aimed at, number one, ensuring that there are more representation of people in universities, in higher places of learning, in politics. That is true. But what is, according to the statistics that we have just received, or that I was graciously able to find, is that only, ever since its inception, is that only 16% of minority groups are in universities. 16% out of the remaining 84 are still majority. If Martin Luther King was here, he would see this as a sorry excuse. Affirmative action has not yet even given us what we need. What they wanted to say was that the business sector was majorly ruled by women. At this point, even with affirmative action, only 30% of women out of the 70%. You have been given 60 years to do what affirmative action wanted to do, and yet you have given us 0 results. 0 to nil, ladies and gentlemen. What is our solution? We have a solution that governments in the world, that business organizations, that higher levels of learning should ensure that we have neutral or neutrally oriented policies. That the only reason why we have 2 judges, 1 male, 1 female, is not because we wanted a woman to be female. It is because the person who is there, the person who was supposed to be there, or the woman who is there, was not chosen because we wanted a woman there, was chosen because of the many women that could have been selected. The women that could have been selected, the man or the guy who is there is qualified. What we want, ladies and gentlemen, is that this neutral-oriented policy should be put in place in higher places of learning, in government, in businesses, everywhere. That we do not want somebody, not because you belong to a certain group, not only because you are disabled. You do not represent the disabled because you are disabled, but because of what you are able to do for them. I rest my case, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time.
Team proposition, second speaker, you have 3 minutes.
So why should affirmative action programs not be scrapped? Because first of all, they provide opportunities and access to services to the minorities. Now, we cannot deny the fact that 16% of people, of minor groups, that are being incorporated into the society are from affirmative actions. I don't know why you're trying to make it look like that 16% is not countable. Excuse me, we are doing something. What are you doing? What is your alternative? You're not giving us any alternative. You know, removing these affirmative action programs is basically leaving them with nothing. You know, these affirmative action programs are providing scholarships for kids who are poor. You're giving a chance to a black man who is living in discrimination to be incorporated into the society. Now, what impact does this bring to the society? First of all, we increase meritocracy. So what is this? This is a system or society. This is where a system or a society or even people having influence according to their abilities. What do I mean by this? Meaning this black person will stop being viewed as a black person, but someone who is actually qualified. You're trying to make it look like this black person is being brought from a place where he's not educated and being told, you know what, come here and be our secretary. No. We are finding qualified people, qualified minorities who are not being represented. That is what we are fighting for. That is what affirmative action is bringing in. Secondly, what is the second impact? We put everyone on the same level. And I feel like we are achieving equality to some extent, because look at this, you know. This black person has been given a chance to work, and they are competing for a CEO position with a white person. We are bringing them to the same level, because without affirmative action programs, it would have been 2 white people going against each other. You know, can you see the logic, what they're trying to bring in? They're trying to say, without affirmative action programs, they would have been far much better. Now, you know, I am a female, you know, and without affirmative action programs, I would have not been in school. That is what they're trying to say. They want a neutral place where men in the past used to discriminate us. Men would tell us, go to the kitchen. Now with affirmative action programs, I can stand here and debate. I can come to school. What are you trying to tell? You want affirmative actions to be scrapped so that I can be in the kitchen? I don't think I want that. Personally, I want to be in school. Secondly, Affirmative action programs bring about equity. Now, equality is not even as important without equity. Now, equity is a building block to equality. Now, equity is giving people what they need. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, giving this poor person a job is basically solving poverty and bringing them to the same level. Meaning, now this rich person and this poor person has a job now. Now they can compete on the same level, achieving equality. Now, equity which we are achieving is achieving equality. Now, what impact does this bring about? It brings about a diversified workforce where we are all working together. I don't understand how you removing affirmative action, it's so bad. It's so bad that you now want me to compete with men who used to discriminate me, who used to tell me go back to the kitchen. I don't think we want such a world.
Team Proposition have been asked the question of how can they validate the question of women ideally contributing to zero value as they claim. And Team Opposition have been questioned on the fact that are we going to give underqualified personnel opportunities in the name of marginalized opportunity? Team Proposition, third speaker, you have 3 minutes.
One of the pillars upon which the construction of social reality is, unfortunately, the stereotypical and archaic views that some of us hold. And if such opinions and views are to be the foundation of a society, it is doomed to crumble. Albert Mugo from Mang'u High School here to strongly propose the motion that says affirmative action has failed in achieving equality and should be scrapped. Moving on to the question. If affirmative action has indeed been successful, we will be still facing the same issues that we are facing today. Why do we still have the issues to do with sanitary pads? Why do we still have issues to do with representations in business? We have same issues that the affirmative action has not yet been successful. Now, moving on to why the speaker that was before me wasted your time is because, one, affirmative action works on a policy by giving special treatment to these minority groups. Now, this has the effect of sending an impression to these groups that their success is not because of their hard work, not because of their gifting, but because they're just beneficiaries for policy. A classic example we saw when Barack Obama won the 2008 presidential elections, and he was taken down on Twitter and claimed by several people that the only reason he went to the Harvard School of Law is because he was black. And although we know that he was successful and he was gifted, they claim that it was only because of the policy. From example given to us by our sister here, the only reason why you were in the school that you are in, not because you are gifted, not hardworking, but just black, coming from a poor background. That is the effect of affirmative action, because it makes them question even their own competence and giving a lasting impression and a lasting damaging effect on the mental and emotional action. Now, bear with me. Another reason why we are strongly for this is because it lowers the standards of personal responsibility. You see, many organizations, schools, and businesses have been forced to lower the standards so as to let these minorities have a chance in the institutions. Now, what this has done, instead of helping them, it has not helped them, because lowering the standards only serves to increase the number of unqualified and ill-equipped students and people in the workforce. We saw this from a report done by Yale University, an Ivy League university that has given opportunities to the minorities, including the blacks and Hispanic women. They still record lower grades than those who really truly deserve it. And what does this leave us? Those denied these opportunities that they truly deserve are also the ones who really suffer. Classic example is by the student Alan Black, a white Californian man who was denied not once but twice admission to the California University because it reserved 16% of the admission for minorities. Another example is in Durban, South Africa, where I fairly denied a group of firefighters a chance because they were just white. Now, denying people opportunity because of such issues is the actual meaning of what discrimination is. A preference of a certain race, a preference of a certain group of minorities over another is what we call discrimination. It hasn't failed. It hasn't led to equality. It has instead perpetuated social division. Thank you.
Team Proposition, third speaker, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Alexander Joroge from Juja Senior School, and I will be the third opposition speaker. First of all, before I start, allow me to appreciate the gentlemen here for their arguments, and allow me to appreciate my teammates for refuting them. Now, I'm going to make the judges' work easier. I'm going to do 3 things. First, I'm going to answer the question that came from the girl from Nova, and then I'm going to give a world that we offer, and then a world that they offer, and compare it with the world that we offer. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been asked, are we going to give these solutions to underqualified people because of what we call marginalized groups? My response to that is that no, we are not going to give it to underqualified people. The assumption that proposition is making is just because I'm from a marginalized group, that means I'm underqualified. That is the basic sole purpose of affirmative action. Affirmative action means that we are going to give this person this chance to read in this school or to do this work so they may increase their knowledge and they may do better for themselves. There have been qualified people who have been based off from minority groups. We are not giving them to underqualified people. We are giving them to qualified people in these marginalized groups, increasing representation and bettering equality. Now let's look at a world that they offer. They offer you a world where they say that reverse discrimination, they say that we should scrap it. But first of all, I have not heard any single argument because the motion states affirmative action should be scrapped, not should be improved, not should be implemented in any other form. It should be scrapped, meaning that it should be removed. Well, have you heard any argument that is literally serious enough for affirmative action to be scrapped? I'm not saying that affirmative action is all good. It has its own weaknesses. But I say, join hands with me to improve it. We should not scrap it. We should actually improve it. I'm not saying that it has its own bad side. It has its good sides. And you saying that it has 0 solutions does not make sense. Before 1963, there was no women representation in the legislature. In 1997, when Honorable Phoebe Apio tabled the motion to put the 2/3 gender rule in Parliament, don't you think that's a solution? Don't you think that created representation in the Parliament? Which means that in the Parliament, women's issues before which were not being discussed were being discussed before today. They're trying to bring you, their world offers you a pre-colonial status where the only woman in society who had a voice was the medicine woman. And that was the only time when women were giving birth. A patriarchal society in which women have no voice. A society in which black men have no voice or minorities have no voice. We increase meritocracy, meaning Mercy Mugure will not be viewed as a black woman anymore. You will be viewed as a woman who is equally capable of competing with men. Let me give you a few other things that gives our side an advantage. Standard Development Goal 5, gender equality. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Gender bias is undermining our social fabric and devalues us. That is what affirmative action is proving to achieve. Kenya Vision 2030. Affirmative action will be undertaken to correct cultural and historical gender, balance physical segregation and regional disparity in order to promote equity in access to education. Why are we trying to improve? Why do we have affirmative action today? It's because men have been put on a pedestal. It's because we are trying to bring back women on the ground. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Team Proposition will be taking closing remarks. You have 1 minute to give your closing remarks.
Okay, for your information, I'm the school captain of the Mang'u High School. My high school has disabled people, but I've never had them complain about anything because I'm ably representing them. So if you think that you need a disabled person so that we can make the disabled happy, you can go with that. Okay, for the issue of women, if the women are still complaining about the same things every day, about sanitary pads in all those counties, then I think you can elect me as a woman rep. I'll do it better for you. Lastly, affirmative action, if it had helped us, or if it had been a success, then I don't think Black Lives Matter will still be an issue in America. It would have been solved centuries ago because it has been there for over 60 years. So you can go with the affirmative, then give me action, because I'm not affiliated to failure.
Team opposition, you have 1 minute to give your closing remarks.
Before I start, allow me to appreciate every single person that has taken part in the debate, including the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, the engines are off and the lights are on. Let us start. 3, 2, 1. First of all, I have a few questions for the proposition that they have not answered. What alternative do you offer? What makes it any different than affirmative action? Do you recognize the sex gap in wages? Are you aware of the history of minority groups? If you are able to look towards the history of minority groups, then you will be able to see why we want affirmative action. Because these people have been down for so long. Affirmative action is trying to give them a leg up in any time. In this time today. We are giving you equity. We are giving you representation. We are giving you opportunities and services. Actually, team proposition, I dare you, scrap affirmative action. What is your best case scenario? Nothing. You have not given us your best case scenario in any form. I dare you, scrap affirmative action. What will we have? We'll have a patriarchal society. We'll have a parliament that is dominated by men. We'll have every single female student here is here through a policy based off on affirmative action. Having no affirmative action means that I will be looking towards men or a few privileged women. With that, thank you.
Mang'u High, particularly for Albert, who was to answer the question, you are to show us how women elected have brought in zero solutions. You didn't answer that question fully. So we didn't get to know why they have not given us any solution when they're elected. In terms of mastery of content, both of you were either to show how affirmative action either has brought in equality or has not brought in equality. So you missed out on that angle of how it's brought in the equality factor or not brought it out. So those are my observations.
Just wanted to reason with both teams first. And reasoning is purely about what we understand by affirmative action. Allocation of resources or even employment, the practice or policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups regarded to as disadvantaged, right? So in terms of your definitions, I agree with what you guys got. So scores in terms of definitions and all. Also scores in terms of presentation, passion of delivery and all that. But then when we have all that, then we have to ask ourselves, how did these people master the topic? How did they at least bring out their arguments based on evidence? Remember, I keep saying that debate is always about evidence-based arguments, all right? So what I had though, we had a lot of hypothetical situations. Hypothetical situations don't exist, but people create them. For example, because I am black, will I be discriminated? Those are hypothetical things. Now, in debate, hypothetical arguments really don't hold much, not unless it's a situation where we have no evidence at all that it's.
With those few remarks, again, here at the heart of debate, we can always go on and on and on about how to achieve affirmative action, but I do have the results with me. Mang'u High School, the judges have awarded you 66%. A round of applause, please, for Mang'u High School. Juja Preparatory, the judges have awarded you 70%. A round of applause, please, for Juja Preparatory. And the winners of this debate is Juja Preparatory. A round of applause for the winners, too. We have come to an end of this episode at the Debate Circle. Please make sure to check our media pages on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at the Debate Circle. And it is goodbye from us.